Hi, this is the video that's going to accompany the Starving at the Seder Shiur for the second lesson for the second week of the Haggadah course. One of the questions I wanted to address by video, because I get asked it a lot, I thought it'd be better to address it personally than in writing, was the question of, Josh, you're teaching us all this about the ancient Seder, the ancient Haggadah, how people did things 2,000 years ago. What do you do with your own Seder? We've learned the Manishta now about the original three questions, the older version. Now we're learning about the appetizers, and specifically with the case of the appetizers, does this study influence how you behave at your own Seder? So first I want to start with a little perspective that I have grown to appreciate about the Seder over the past 20 years. And I've been leading Seders for about 20 years now in my home. When I was first a rabbinical student in 1994 and I led my first Seder, I was all hot to trot. I was all excited that the food was just a distraction. We would eat so that we weren't hungry. But the main thing about the Seder and the Haggadah was to sit there and to tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of the Exodus from Egypt. And I was very, very excited about that. And I just wanted to talk, study, and just neglect the food issue as much as possible, understanding that we had to eat, but just that wasn't my main thing. Of course, that didn't make people too happy. Other people came to the meal expecting it to be a good meal. And as I've studied over the past 20 years, as I've studied the sources about the Seder and about the Haggadah and the history of the evening, I've come to realize that you can't make such a distinction. Such a distinction isn't really so Jewish. This idea that everything that occurs in our head, our mental faculties, are very important, and eating, satisfying our stomach, is not so important. You can't make that distinction, and that distinction is not inherent to the meal, nor do I think is it a proper Jewish distinction. The Seder, in my opinion, is first and foremost a celebratory meal. It's a meal in which we gather together to eat good food and to enjoy each other's company, to act like free people, eating a good meal. Now, in some ways, you have to realize that we've lost our appreciation for a good meal because most of us, thank God, are not starving or not hungry for really any large portions of our lives. We don't live in a subsistence diet. We don't struggle to put food on the table. We may struggle to put good food on the table. We may have to work hard, but I imagine that most of the people living here have never really experienced hunger. Most of the people listening to this have never really experienced hunger, never really experienced true starvation or true difficulty finding enough food to put on the table. But in the ancient world, unless you were a very rich person, that probably was their day-to-day life. They just didn't have a lot of food to eat. And they were probably hungry, not starving, but hungry a large portion of the time. And so when they got together on Shabbat, and all the more so on Pesach, and had a meal where you had too much to eat, more food than you could eat, a really abundant meal, and they did that once a year, you can imagine what a cause for celebration that must have been. And that the food, eating a lot of food, really would have made a person very happy. It would have been an hizdamnut in Hebrew, an opportunity to really do something that you don't do the rest of the year. And I think that that is one of the most important things to remember. It's hard for us to capture that feeling because we don't feel that way, but we should try. And we should try to remember it. And some of you may have developed strategies already to remember the fact that there are still people starving or at least hungry, both in America and certainly in the rest of the world. Now, when it comes to the appetizers in particular, realizing that food is a major issue at the meal and is not just something that's to the side, I do think that there's something to be said that when you come to a good meal, you don't invite somebody to your house, give them a sprig of parsley or some kind of lousy vegetable, very, very small amount of it, and then tell them that you're going to talk for 2 hours. A good meal has a lot of courses, and the courses don't start at 10:30 at night when you're not hungry and after you've spoken for a long time. So there's some higayon, there's some sense in saying we should go back to that time where before we had this discussion, we spoke. Just the same way if you invite somebody to come to your house for an evening lecture at your home, you put some hors d'oeuvres on the table. This way they can munch while they're talking. That being said, I think that to serve an appetizer course as they did in some of these Haggadot that we're looking at would be just quite quite difficult. It's just too disruptive to tradition, too disruptive to habit to serve meat and vegetables and fruits and rice, or if you eat rice, you don't eat rice, or things of that nature at the Seder before you get to the Manishtana. It would make people, on the one hand, think about what they're doing, but it would also probably lengthen the time of the Seder, which is not necessarily such a great thing to do, and it would be just too disruptive to tradition. So the compromise that I've found, first of all, I explain this to people. I try to educate them, and I do put out food on the table to keep people from being hungry throughout the rest of the meal. So I'll put out, I found a good idea is to put out nuts, keeps people from being hungry. Healthy. Dried fruits also satisfies people, but it doesn't stop them from eating while they're talking. So, we're reading the Mani Shana, we're going through the story of the Exodus, we're reading all the texts. You grab some cashews, some almonds, stuff like that. A salad, the problem with the salad, it takes a lot of time. You've got clearing the dishes, bringing the dishes, etc., etc. Someone's got to wash the dishes. It takes up a lot of time, so I don't serve a big salad. Also doesn't fill you up that much. To me, the nuts, some kind of nosh like that, maybe sliced pieces of potato. One year, this was a good idea, just remember this now, I made like homemade potato chips. Delicious. I made copious amounts of them, and with some kosher salt on top. They were delicious. They counted as karpas, and my children ate a lot, and nobody was giving me the evil eye as I spoke about the Haggadah. So if you have any more questions about various things that I do at my Seder, please feel free to ask on the forum. And again, kol hakavod on the great learning you've already been doing.